Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'll just wait a moment until 2 o'clock just to make sure the live stream is running and ready. Right, it's 2 o'clock. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Matter 11 hearing session for the examination of the Sandwell local plan. Everybody participating in this session has participated in an earlier session, so I don't need to go through all my opening announcements about how this works. But of course, if anybody does have any questions about the procedural side of how this is going to work this afternoon, then please do just raise your hand and let me know. What we will do is, for the sake of the live stream, just do the brief introductions. I'm Catherine Jack. I'm a Chartered Town Planner and the Inspector appointed to examine this plan. Mr. Richards for the Council, please.
Yes, Hugh Richards, Planning Barrister advising the Council.
Mark Watkins, Sandwell Council.
Sandwell Council.
And Mr. Carroll, please.
Yeah, Ian Carroll, representing the Friends of Sheepwash Local Nature Reserve.
Thank you very much. Right, so for this session, we are looking at the waste and minerals policies and the constraints and industrial legacy policies plan. And we're going to start with the waste policies, which I don't actually have very many outstanding questions on these. So looking at policy SWA2 first. There was a representation made by the West Midlands Resource Technical Advisory Body relating to point 1 of the policy, essentially saying that where it says existing levels, in the second line, it should be to maintain maximum levels to ensure effectiveness by making it clear that it's the maximum throughput level of the facility that needs safeguarding, not simply what the prevailing existing level might be. The Council has responded to that in their hearing statement with a proposed modification along those lines. That, as it would be a change to the policy itself, would need to be a main modification. Any comments on that?
No, I think we're happy with that.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got no further queries on that. Then in paragraph 13.41, the technical advisory body had said that this should specify that, or specifically refer to the agent of change principle, which is set out in the National Planning Policy Framework. Now, that principle is essentially what this paragraph is getting at, I think, without actually saying the words agent of change. Is there any thoughts from the Council as to whether it would be helpful if it did say agent of change and refer to the NPPF?
Yes, Inspector, we could amend the paragraph to incorporate the agent of change principle.
Okay. If you're happy to do that, I think it would just be a point of clarification as an additional modification.
Yes, yes.
Okay. And that's all I wanted to say on SWA2. And I now want to jump to SWA4, which is a policy about locational considerations for new waste facilities. Now, in this one, parts 3 and 4 of the policy relate to supporting information that would be expected for any planning application. And the question is it necessary for that to be in the policy? That sort of supporting information typically goes in the supporting text. So I wondered whether there's a particular justification for 3 and 4 being included in this particular policy, because when we get to the minerals policies, that information is in the supporting text instead.
Yeah, I think this is more of a legacy policy from the Black Country Core strategy, and I think this is how it was worded. So I have no issue with moving this supporting information 3 and 4 into the supporting text of the policy.
Okay, I think that makes sense, and actually it does already start doing that at paragraph 13.68. So it probably needs to be exported there, just ensuring there's no duplication.
Yeah.
Okay, and I've got no questions on SWA 5. Anybody want to say anything on any of the SWA 1 to 5 policies before I move on? There are no other modifications suggested by the council, I don't think. No? All happy?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So minerals policies next, and SMI 1, which is about minerals safeguarding. So I think Mr. Sherms alluded to the fact the other day that there isn't a minerals safeguarding area for the borough anymore. Is that right? Did I hear that correctly
well,
the other day in a different
Yeah, if I can
context?
explain, Inspector. Yes, the borough, virtually all the borough within the old core strategy was designated as a safeguarding mineral area. But when we had the updated mineral study done in 2020 and then the update for Sandwell in 2023, it was decided that it wouldn't be worth designating the whole of the borough a mineral safeguarding area.
On what particular basis? That because it's an urban area, and has it considered that there is presumably there's still a resource underneath the existing development? So how does that?
There is, but I think because it's the built-up nature of the borough, I think it's proven that it may not be economical to get the remaining minerals out of the ground.
Okay. Of course, that's a current situation, and potentially that could change in the future, couldn't it?
Could do, yes, yeah.
There are also things like buffer zones and standoff distances to residential development, which apply in many rural or mixed rural and urban areas, which in this area simply would not leave very much land at all.
Okay. So that essentially there just isn't a mineral safeguarding area at all. It's not even small bits remaining. It's the whole thing is being removed, which explains why it's not on the policies map. Okay, and I put on the agenda a quick query about sand and gravel reserves. Now, obviously, the framework expects a land bank of them for at least 7 years' supply. But the evidence says that there is no workable sand and gravel left in the borough. Are you okay? Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we were just whispering.
Ah.
Off mic.
That's fine. It looks like, you know, it's hard to tell what's going on when you're in a completely different county, isn't it? Okay, so there's no workable sand and gravel resources left in Sandwell, essentially.
No, what it is, it's the West Midlands, 7 West Midlands metropolitan authorities do a combined Midlands aggregate assessment. And out of the 7 Met authorities, there's only sand and gravel workings in the Solihull borough. But in the main, the whole of the West Midlands Met area relies on imports from Staffordshire in the main, and also the East Midlands, and a little bit from the southwest. So in all, it's a net importer of sand and gravel.
Okay, so in terms of what's expected, that sort of net importing is obviously expected to carry on for Sandwell, and I just wonder whether the plan should say a little bit more on that, because it's at 13.94, I think it is. It talks about the situation with sand and gravel and potential sterilisation by HS2, etc. And then it doesn't then sort of go on to say, well, what's going to happen? Whereas with the crushed rock supply that follows on in 13.96, it does talk about, well, okay, crushed rock's going to be imported, and where from? It was only a smallish point, but given that you can't meet the land banking expectations, it just seems to me that the plan goes a bit silent on it at the moment.
Yes,
but as far as sand and gravel goes,
yeah, we could propose a modification to state where we would be importing the sand and gravel from, as such with the crushed rock supply.
Yeah, thank you. Because there's obviously, from what you've said, it's information you know and you're aware of. It just doesn't tell us in the plan at this point in time.
Would that be it's obviously going to be an explanatory text point. Will it be an additional mod or a main mod?
I think we'll have it as a main mod, please,
Yep.
given it's meeting a framework, you know, addressing a point that the framework expects you to meet, which you can't meet. Yes. Okay, so in terms of point 2 of the policy, that expects developments that are over 5 hectares to be accompanied by supporting information demonstrating that a minerals resource would not be needlessly sterilised. So the question about this is, why 5 hectares? How was that threshold decided upon? And is that justified? And also, following on from that, well, how would somebody deal with this supporting information? Is this a minerals resource assessment, or what exactly are you looking for? So perhaps we can deal with the 5 hectare threshold first.
Yeah, the 5 hectares came out of the mineral study that we had done for the Black Country Plan, and then for the carried over into the Sandwell update of the minerals. So that's where the 5 hectares has come from.
Can you recall what the basis of it was? I mean, why a cut off at 5 hectares when presumably there could be smaller sites that have minerals resources?
I'll have to check up in the mineral study for you, Inspector.
Okay, perhaps if you can signpost me to the relevant bit where I can find the answer, that would be helpful. And then in terms of what the policy expects, where it says it should be accompanied by some supporting information, as set out in the justification. So Just trying to understand exactly what people need to, is it what's in 13.100
Yes.
that they need to provide? Okay. Then I think that's probably sufficiently clear. So we just need to get to the bottom of that 5 hectares and the justification for that. And then sort of leading on from that, I suppose, is whether setting that threshold at 5 hectares, is it going to have any particular effect on delivery of any of the sites in Sandwell? I'm particularly thinking of any of your larger strategic allocations, for example. Are they likely to be, some of them are going to be more than 5 hectares and might be burdened in inverted commas by this? Would there be a burden in
I'm not sure.
terms of delivery of sites, do you think?
Just thinking of the couple of the large sites such as Lion Farm, that has been, I think that was a brick clay workings on that site formerly, so that would probably be a sterilised site now, because I think that was completed back in the 1950s, early 60s, and then filled over, and that's how we've got the playing fields on there now. And then I think at Friar Park there was a sewerage farm on there. I'm not sure if there may have been open cast coal mining in there on the past. So those larger sites, I think, have been sterilised in terms of what mineral resources are left there.
Would that have been considered when the 5 hectares was recommended as threshold through the study? Did it think about potential sites?
No, it didn't mention any sites by name. I think it was just across the borough wide, if any sites of 5 hectares came forward potentially.
And has that got anything to do with a sort of tipping point about, you said that it's generally not considered economically viable to extract from sites across Sandwell?
Yeah, I think especially
sort of
the smaller sites, that's where I think the 5 hectares threshold came from, that the smaller sites may not be economic viable, and there may be other environmental issues, such as they could be close to sensitive uses, such as residential.
Okay. Okay. So, and the policy focuses on safeguarding secondary and recycled aggregates, really, and your permitted mineral infrastructure. All of those sites, the mineral infrastructure sites are on the policies map and are identified, aren't they?
Yeah, they're all the different types are all identified on the policies map.
And then there's no further questions or queries about that one. I'm going to go to policy SNI 2. And in part 3, it draws in consideration zones. Can you explain to me what those are and how and where they're defined? Does it set out somewhere what that means?
Oh yeah, they're former mine working limestone, Connery, yeah, former line working areas that have had ground condition issues, such as mine shafts, and so yeah.
Okay. So it's about sort of ground stability and that sort of
Yes,
thing.
it's to do with ground stability. So yeah.
So, and you've consideration zones is in the policy with, you know, capital C, capital Z. It's obviously a term. So I was just wondering, is that defined in the glossary, or is it a term that comes from another document? I don't think it's a NPPF term, but is it defined?
I think it's another legacy policy from the Black Country Core Strategy.
Okay.
I've done a word search on the glossary, it's not there.
No, I mean, I think if you're going to have it as a policy consideration, somewhere it needs to explain what that is, because it's not necessarily a commonly known definition, is it? Either that or describe it differently. But if consideration zones, it almost sounds like it was something that at some point has been mapped out as a, you know, having a zone indicates at some point somebody had it on a plan somewhere, but
yes,
it's not on the policies map, is it? So I think to make this effective, we need to know what you're getting at.
It was those zones were on the previous policies map. I can double check on that, but I think that's where they've come from.
But you're not carrying them forward into the current policies map, or was it your intention to and they haven't moved forward?
I think that it might be an omission on the policies map, seeing that they're mentioned in the policy here in the document, but not on the...
I think perhaps look into that and let me know what the intention was. I mean, obviously, if it should be on the policies map, it's going to need to go on that now famous list of potential changes to the map. So perhaps you could provide me with a little note just to explain the background and what those consideration zones, you know, how they were defined previously. Is it a certain X meters distance from the mine shaft, or whatever it might be, just so I can understand what that is. It may be that it would be helpful to put something in the glossary once you've got to the bottom of it, so that the plan can explain itself as well on that. Okay. So that's all I wanted to say about the minerals policies. Anything else from the council that I need to know about? Other updates on those? No. In which case, we're going to the SCO policies next, and I want to jump straight to SCO 3. Which is land contamination and instability. Now, I know that the Friends of Sheepwash, Mr. Carroll, has objected to this policy, and in large part, as you've explained to us in previous sessions, that is, you do so taking the Rattle Chain site as an example of your wide-ranging concerns about land contamination and harm to human health and various as yet unknowns, essentially, and unforeseeable effects. So whilst it's probably the aim of the policy is about avoiding those kind of issues and potential for harm, But, Mr. Carroll, I hope I'm going to suitably summarise your points here, and you can add to them in a minute if I miss anything. But you basically consider that it places too much reliance on site assessments. It only requires those to provide satisfactory information, and whether that's an appropriate bar, I suppose. And that's about land contamination and instability. And you've also raised the point that it's not, how can you know that there won't be any risk or future risk associated with these, as part 2 of the policy seeks. Is there anything else on that before I go to the council for their response on those particular points? Is there anything else that you'd like to expand or add to that list, Mr. Carroll?
Yes, Inspector. I'm concerned about the EIA assessments that the council have done previously, the environmental impact assessments, and also screening opinions. Not just on that Rattlechain side, but across the borough. I've raised objections to other developments in different areas, and I don't know if the council have ever done an EIA on any site. It always says there isn't a need for one. That may be the case, or it may not be, but I'm just concerned that it seems whatever site comes up, there's never an EIA carried out. The screening opinion is, I don't know what that's based on. It's just maybe a contaminated land officer's assessment. Whether it's the EIA, I don't know how that process works. But that's one concern I have about how that figures in all of this process. But as stability goes, with that Rattlechain site and again on others, there are historic shafts and things like that reliant on the coal authority. Some of their records have also been inaccurate and wrong, as the council have unfortunately have found out, or neighbouring authorities. On the Beans site, for example, just over the border in Cosley, there are issues there. And on the Rattlechain site, there is a substantial mine shaft there, which kind of is on the edge of the property and on the land yet to be developed, which is a considerable concern. So again, all of these issues of stability, risk, potential for climate change issues as well, as I raised. There have been studies, limited studies, but maybe that's something that's going to be factored in over the next 20 years or so. It's very difficult to know what may come up, what may change, and an assessment now might not necessarily be how it plays out maybe in 15 years.
Okay, thank you very much. Over to the council then, particularly on the points that I raised about the wording in the policy that come related to Mr. Carroll's concerns. So the word satisfactory information, and then the bits in 2 about any risk and no future risk, and whether those are appropriate. And then if we could talk about whether there's how this sits with potential for climate change risk, and how it connects with any EIA, including screening assessments that you might need to carry out in the future. We'll leave Rattlechain out of it for a little while, but we might come back to that, seeing as we've already had a long discussion about Rattlechain. But over to the council, please.
Yes, can I start? And it's probably a good place to start with the plan's attitude to risk. The plan is cautious. It acknowledges where there is risk and requires assessment in order for development to obtain consent. Mr. Carroll's point is, well, even if you do an assessment which shows that there is no current risk, how do you know that he gave the example of 15 years, but it could be the lifetime of the development. How do you know that a future risk won't arise? And the answer is, all you can do is to base your assessment at the time on the best available evidence. Which is what the policies will require. That process, Mr. Carroll rightly surmises, involves environmental impact assessment, screening and scoping, and reports, and public consultation on those reports, the opportunity for the council to request additional information so that the council takes its decision in the light of the best available evidence as required by the directive. That inevitably involves matters of judgment as to what information is sufficient. We quite understand that Mr. Carroll may have a different view as to what EIA process or information is sufficient. If he thinks that the council has made errors in its scoping opinions or its EIA assessments, he's perfectly at liberty to avail himself of the remedies of either judicial review or participating in appeals, depending on what the council, whether the council grants a planning permission or refuses it. But that's the way the system's set up, and this policy is designed to operate within the system of consenting set out by law. As to his concern that some historic records may be inaccurate, again, the developer will be expected to consult historic records, but also to make an assessment on a development site, and the council will do its best to assess it. If Mr. Carroll or anybody else has information that would assist the council in making that decision on a particular planning application, then that's why planning applications are advertised and responses are invited. And I think that covers the 4 points that he raised.
Okay, so in terms of what the policy seeks, it's looking for satisfactory information. How does the council see that taking shape, essentially? I mean, who produces that? And presumably it's going to need to be prepared by somebody appropriately qualified to carry that out, and part of considering whether it's satisfactory or not.
Yes, but just like the council doesn't insist that drawings for a house in a planning application are carried out by a qualified architect in its policies in the plans, this policy requires the submission of satisfactory information. Whether the information is satisfactory or not is a matter for the judgment of the council. That will include a judgment as to whether or not it's been produced by appropriate individuals. And
depends on the baseline situation, I suppose, and on a case-by-case basis. I mean, is satisfactory the appropriate word?
Well, you could delete satisfactory and just say the submission of information.
Satisfactory was more of a catch-all term to explain that, as you suggested, inspector of each site is different and would be potentially affected by different grounds issues, but we're open to using a different word to satisfactory.
Well, I think it's not necessarily that I've got a problem with the use of the word satisfactory. I think it's understanding where the council's coming from with that, and that perhaps Mr. Carroll has sort of understood that maybe that is sometimes when you're setting a bar, you might say, well, you're setting a high bar, a
Well,
medium bar, a
yes.
satisfactory one, and it could be perceived as that, but I don't.
Well, no,
That
but if-
isn't what you intend, is it?
No.
No.
And if the evidence submitted wasn't, quote, satisfactory, or an alternative word might be sufficient, then the council would say so. And if it was in an EIA case, the council would be able to make a formal request under the regulations requiring the production of further information. But I know Mr. Carroll is understandably sceptical in these matters, but he's reading into this policy words and concerns that simply aren't there.
I think that the purpose of this policy was to be quite supportive and recognise that the planning system has a major role to play in making ground and conditions better and cleaner all the time. And there's lots of sites that we've heard about in just now in the minerals policies that were quarried, you know, half a century ago, and a measure was put in place following that to make them safe. But that measure might, you know, in today's age and technology, a better measure could be employed than what was used back then. And I think this is just recognising there's that constant need to find better solutions to these past industrialised sites.
Okay.
Satisfactory is a binary term. I mean, if the policy said subject to the submission of unsatisfactory information, then we could understand what the concern was. That's why I say it could equally be deleted.
Which might take it a step further away from what Mr. Carroll's concerns. Yeah,
I mean,
not sure that would solve
it
the
wouldn't
problem.
make any sense to say to subject to the submission of very comprehensive information, you know, to try and set a high bar by using some other word other than satisfactory.
Because it might not be proportionate to a particular site's scenario, might it? I mean, obviously the borough's got widespread industrial legacy, and land contamination and addressing that is a key consideration for much of your development there, including your regeneration aspirations, isn't it? So,
I mean, the information will have to be sufficient in order to demonstrate the matters set out in paragraph 2. And depending on the potential nature of the harm to which risk has to be avoided, that will depend on the nature of the information required under paragraph 1. Because if you've got a risk of very serious harm from something, then you will need satisfactory, you will need information sufficient to demonstrate that there will be no such risk.
So Mr. Carroll, I mean, given the nature of Sandwell, sites like Rattlechain and others, I suspect that your concern isn't really with having a policy relating to land contamination and instability per se. Do you accept that should be a part of the plan? Even if, you know, perhaps you consider some of the wording has missed the mark in your view, but some of your concerns seem to be more about how the council might apply it rather than what the policy says in and of itself. Is that fair?
Yes, that's true. It's the practicalities of it, and examples I could give, not just of Rattle Chain, but of the former WH Keys site in West Bromwich, where assessments were done by the environmental consultancy for that, the landowners, the buyers. I went back in the records under FOI and found there were clear pollutant linkages from that site to the Millpool open space, which is one of the BNG sites. A bitumen contamination, and when that development came forward in 2006, there was considerable recontamination by the same route, but all of my concerns were just batted away by council and the Environment Agency. They weren't taken or investigated, but then I went back and found that there was a previous pollutant linkage that had clearly not been assessed properly in the planning application stage, and there was no mention of a penstock valve that was present and had allowed the pollution to take place onto the Millpool. So I'm concerned about historic records being lost, and too much reliance on them now rather than what has previously been known, and it's too much reliance on somebody signing something off, an environmental consultancy coming out with the fact that, oh, there's no pollutant linkage, there's no pathway. That's the main concern, is that they always come up with the excuse there's no pathway. Well, I put it that the case that the council of Part C, land that will potentially become contaminated as a result of development. Now, the potential, again, is very difficult to understand as to whether they can predict that, based on evidence that I've already said. Just personal experience and of sites like this that have been contaminated, it just concerns me that the practicalities of it are difficult. The theory is wonderful. The theory is wonderful on paper. The desktop studies, of course, they analyse the contaminants or whatever. They say there's mitigation. They can do this, that, and the other, but the practicalities of it, when it comes to it, I'm afraid we're left with just that, and they're not borne out by the reality of it.
So is there something in particular that you would suggest could be changed about the policy?
Well,
the policy can only set out a framework.
Yeah.
And we need to get the policy as sound, so it's sound. Maybe it already is, but if you feel it's not, I understand your concerns about how it might be applied. But obviously, in the same way that you're saying nobody can ever know exactly what will happen in the future, the plan will set out a policy, the plan itself, or my examination of it, can't then control how it's used down the line. We need to set out a clear policy. Have you got any particular suggestions that we could discuss about different wording, or is it not so much that the wording's wrong, in your view, as not sound, but it harks back to your concerns about, well, will it be effective in relation to sites like Rattle Chain, rather than that the policy needs to change in itself?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, have we gone to the planning policy framework now, or is that?
We can do, yes.
I mean, paragraph 190. Right, it says that responsibility should securing a safe development rests with the developer or the landowner. This See, that's I have problems with that really, rather than anything. It's
I
not.
can't change that.
I know.
I'm
Unfortunately,
afraid.
that unfortunately is the real
That's national
weakness.
policy at the
Yeah,
moment.
it's a real weakness.
That's the framework we're working
Yeah.
within.
So
And this policy SCO3, obviously needs to be generally consistent with that. It doesn't have to be
Yeah,
the
yeah.
same, but it's got to be consistent. And obviously, any change to the policy needs to be on the basis of a soundness concern. The council have explained their position about, best evidence at the time, etc. And I understand your concerns around that. But unless you can suggest another way of doing it within the national context, I can't see that we can take that discussion very much further. And if it works effectively, does the policy cover everything that it ought to do? Because you said the theory is wonderful.
Yeah.
So in terms of content of the policy, is there any more it could do, essentially?
no, I don't think there is. I think, unfortunately, it's the way it's worded. It's just unfortunate we have to accept risks on landfill sites, which I don't believe are an acceptable risk at all for development. I don't believe landfill sites should come forward for residential development.
Okay. Understood. Is there anything the council would like to say in light of the discussion I just had with Mr. Carroll? Any further comments? You're muted at the moment, council.
Yes, I was just noting that I have the controller too.
Yeah.
I don't think there is anything else we can usefully add. I think both Mr. Carroll and ourselves have set out our position, and then you'll simply have to referee.
So, I mean, obviously, building on former landfill sites is potentially complex. As we've discussed, likely to require considerable remediation, and there is strict regulatory requirements around that as well in this country. Just getting back to whether the wording is right, it says there'll be no significant harm, I'm looking at 2 now, or any risk of significant harm to the health and the well-being of people and the environment. So can you ever know that there wouldn't be any risk? Probably not. Is it right for the policy to be aiming for that, even if you could never know there was any risk? Or is that intended to be based on the best available information at that point in time in the manner that Mr. Richards has already described?
I think it is, because that's referring to the assessment world, where the assessment must demonstrate that. So I think we are talking about there'll be no risk of significant harm in the context of the information available at that assessment stage.
Yeah, and the assessment must be an adequate assessment in order to demonstrate that. And nobody could come and say, well, we've done an assessment on the back of a fact packet, and according to that assessment, there's no risk of any significant harm, and therefore we've met your policy. I mean, that would be absurd.
Indeed, and the same with future risk, no current likelihood, or future risk that groundwater or watercourses will become contaminated. With Mr. Carroll's point, you couldn't possibly know what will happen across at the end of the lifetime of the development, for example. Is it right that the policy still, that should be the aim at the point at which you
Yes,
assess
I mean,
what the risk is that what the
it's the
policy is? It's
assessment,
trying to be as tight as possible at the point of
Yes.
assessment. Is that what it's doing?
correct. It's the assessment must demonstrate that. If the council has any any doubt about the adequacy or thoroughness of the assessment, then the council would decline to draw the conclusions required by the policy.
Okay. So also in the general realms of regeneration ambitions, setting out the right policy approach and land contamination, etc. Looking at the framework again at 191B, talks about identifying and protecting tranquil areas that have remained relatively undisturbed by noise and are prized for recreation and amenity value because of that. Does SCO3 provide the wiggle room to deal with that sort of scenario, or would somewhere else in the plan cover it? Does it need to be? Is there something that you're likely to face in Sandwell?
I mean, the preceding policy around pollution control does talk about noise pollution and such, but tranquil areas, it's I've never really read that policy much in the context of Sandwell, because there are so few parts of the borough that aren't far away from the key road network sources of noise. It's not a rural borough that you might say has particularly prized tranquil areas. There's obviously areas that are very important for recreation and amenity value, but I've always read that in the mostly.
I mean, obviously it's particularly in the framework in the context of ground conditions and pollution. It's not general tranquility and
Right.
and openness. So if it's something that you're not going to encounter much in your borough, you would rely on what the framework says rather than have a policy specific requirement for it. Is that?
Yeah, that's yeah.
Apart from insofar as SCO2 tackles things like noise.
Yes. And policy 2A is quite broad in its scope.
Okay. So obviously, again, they are interrelated, aren't they? SCO2 and SCO3 in particular. That could be read together. Mr. Carroll, have you got any other points on this that you wanted to raise while you're with us today? Anything else, Mr. Carroll? No. You're on mute at the moment, Mr. Carroll.
It's just about the lifetime of the plan and whether that is really achievable, I think. Yeah, it's just really about the timescale for remediation and whether that would be met within the lifetime of the plan, I suppose.
Okay, thank you. So 15-year plan period, essentially. Council, any thoughts on that? I mean, perhaps some remediation will take much longer than that. Is that a problem?
Yeah, I don't know if looking in the eyes of SCO3, I don't think that policy is committing us to remediating everything by the plan period, and it's about, you know, the site allocations specifically. But you know, we've presented evidence that we think the site allocations have a reasonable prospect of being delivered within the plan period, and that would include, where relevant, remediation.
Yeah. I mean, SCO3 is not claiming that the regeneration of the borough will be complete in the plan period in respect of the remediation of derelict, despoiled, degraded and contaminated land. I don't think even Mr. Carroll thinks it will be. Inspector, you're still on mute.
Sorry. We all do it from time to time.
I hope you haven't been talking for too long. I just thought, well, it's been quiet for quite a long time.
Yeah. I was looking through my notes, and then what I said was, so does anybody have anything else to say on the other SCO policies? Because I haven't got further questions about them, but this is the opportunity if you want to say anything about SCO 1 or 2. Because
I would just, sorry,
yes,
the footnotes 240, 248 and 249 refer to an earlier version of the MPPF, which it might be
yes,
to update.
very much so. And actually, that's probably something else to check through the plan, because there might be some other road ones like that, mightn't there, refer to.
I think you might be right.
2021, yeah. Okay, I've got no further questions on those, which means that we are at the end of our discussion about matter 11 today.
Do you want me to do run through the
little run through, and then I'm just checking there are no other modifications in your statement that I've missed, but I don't think there are.
We have got one more point we'd like to draw to your attention.
Ah, yes, please, Miss.
Yes, Inspector. It's going back to the consideration zones. They were first identified in 1983. The two, the one at Conagry and cow. Yeah, it's all based on cow pasture. But they all came about due to a limestone collapse at a place called cow pasture. And so then the council adopted the National Coal Board's Subsistence Engineers Handbook for longwall mining, in which it drew up 2 consideration zones within the borough. So they've been around for about 40 years now, and they were in the SAD and have been carried over from the SAD document. It all relates into potential if there is any mine collapse on those sites.
Okay, so it is something that you intend to bring forward into this plan and bring forward onto the policies map as we were discussing
Yes,
earlier.
because
Yeah.
the latest planning application on the Conagry site has referenced the consideration zone in its grants sustainability report.
So it would signpost anybody to the need to explore that
Yes.
potential problem further, essentially, if they were making a planning application in that area as part of their assessment process. Okay, so I think everything that we discussed before will stand essentially about making that clear in the glossary what they are and putting them on the list for the policies map, etc.
Yes. And does that obviate the need for a note? Have you now got enough?
Yes, I think that will be fine. It would still be helpful if I could just have that. What were you going to direct me to? Oh, no, that's terrible, isn't it? You were going to direct me to evidence for something else, I think.
It was, the 5 hectares, which looks
Yes,
like
yes,
a
thank you.
legacy policy from the Black Country Core strategy.
Okay. So in terms of that, it's just being sure that there's justification for that continuation, essentially. So if there's something in your mineral study that you can point me to, that would be helpful.
Yes, well, that will feature on my list of things to do.
Perfect. Would you like to run through those then, Mr. Richards?
So going back then to the start of this afternoon, an SWA 2.1 and the deletion of existing and insertion of maximum. We're going to do a main modification as per our answer to question 11.1a in our hearing statement. And then in paragraph 13.41, we're going to do an additional modification to include reference to the agent of change principle. We are going to next to do a main modification so that SWA 4, 3 and 4, so policies 3 and 4 in SWA 4, go to the supporting text, probably to 13.68, but we will avoid duplication. Next, a main modification to paragraph 13.94 in the context of policy SMI1, so that we explain where sand and gravel will be imported from. Next, in the context of SMI 1.2, the note to you justifying the 5 hectares. Next, in the context of SMI 2.3 and the consideration zones, we're going to include a definition in the glossary and show on the policies map. And that is it, unless I have missed something.
Checking the footnotes for the NPPF, updated NPPF references are the point that I've got at this stage.
Do you want us to insert 2023 footnotes, or if it's applicable, do you think we ought to refer to 2024 footnotes?
Well,
NPPF, because on adoption in development management, it will be the 2024 version, won't it?
That is the transitional conundrum, is it not? That you know, we are in a situation where this plan has to be in accordance with December 2023, and that's therefore the logical place to point to. But we've also had discussions like with the Greenbelt situation and decision taking, where you can't help but look forward to the current situation. So I wonder, I mean, it might be a situation where, because it's going to relate to the soundness of this plan, it might seem a bit strange in places, but more often than not, it's probably going to be December 23 that you still need to
Yes.
refer to
I think
in
that's
this
right.
plan. And the fact that there is a more up-to-date framework, and we might get another one before too long, will be a separate material consideration, won't it?
Yeah, no, well, we'll do it. We'll, for the sake of consistency, we'll do it to the December 2023.
I think that's the right thing to do, because otherwise it could draw in consistency confusions and soundness terms for this plan. Okay, that brings us then to the end of matter 11. Thank you once again to everybody that's taken part. Thank you, Mr. Carroll. I think we're seeing you again, are we? Are you back with us again, Mr. Carroll?
No, that there was a.
No.
I think there was a confusion between the SCO3 and SHO3. That was what it was.
Okay. Well, in that case, thank you very much for attending multiple times through the examination and sharing your views with us. Thank you very much. Okay, everybody, those that are back tomorrow, it's matter 5 at 9:30
Yes.
tomorrow.
We will have with us virtually our climate change consultants. They will not be in the room with us. They'll be on a separate screen.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much.
That will be
Okay.
the discussion.
Yeah.
Very much. Mark.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.